All right. Good morning. I think we better go on. Good to see everybody. Glad you're here. Hope you had a good Thanksgiving. Be turning your Bibles to Genesis chapter 19. Genesis chapter 19. Hope you had a good Thanksgiving. Hope you got to see everybody. You ate enough turkey. If you didn't eat any turkey, that's all right. Maybe you had dressing. If you didn't have dressing, maybe you had something to eat. That's the main thing, just have something to eat. That's the crux to the matter. Winding down this year with regards to the year. And so it's soon going to be at an end, and we'll start a new one, Lord willing. And what a great thing that will be. We do need, as I said Wednesday night, we're finishing up, or we will be finishing up James this week, and we will probably start a new book. If you have a suggestion, please tell us, and you need to do that today, if you don't mind, so that I can start on that and have at least some of that ready for Wednesday night. So if you don't have a suggestion, but you want to make one anyway, go right ahead. That's fine. Genesis 19, this is, we talk about many things with regards to the beginning, and we see the depravity of man in many ways. Of course, the depravity of man's already been shown, so to speak, back in Genesis chapter 5, Genesis chapter 6 and 7, where God looked upon the world. He was upset that he'd made it, and so Noah was commissioned, if you will, to build an ark, and Noah did. And God was all upset because of the way man was acting. Well, sadly, man repeats that process many, many times over, and they do here with regards to Sodom and Gomorrah, of course. We'll find out many things. We'll see some things that we've seen before already, in this book. That's going to be interesting, but let's get with it if you don't mind. Now, the two angels, we talked about last week, in chapter 18 especially, it talks about three men, verse 2. We talked about one of them, and we identified it last week. One of them was the Lord. There were two others, and the Hebrew writer says, he sort of helps us a little bit in Hebrews chapter 13. He identifies two of them as angels. And so we have these two angels, as verse 1 says, he came to Sodom in the evening, and Lot was sitting in the gate of Sodom. When Lot saw them, he rose to meet them, and he bowed himself with his face toward the ground. And he said, "Hear now, my lords, please turn in to your servant's house and spend the night and wash your feet. Then you may rise early and go on your way." And they said, "No, but we will spend the night in the open square." But he insisted strongly, so they turned in to him and entered his house. Then he made them a feast and baked unleavened bread, and they ate. Let's just stop right there for just a second. Let's understand a couple of things. So let's understand, first of all, it talks about two angels. And these angels evidently had human form. There's a lot we don't understand about angels. There's some things we do. God really didn't reveal a lot about angels. Now, understand also that the word that's not the Hebrew word, but the Greek word that's used in the Septuagint, which is the Greek translation of the Old Testament, and also used in the New Testament, the word angelos, which we get the word angel from, simply means messenger. And so, admittedly, there's probably more questions that we have about these messengers, these angels, than we have answers, because God didn't reveal a lot of things about angels. We understand that God uses angels. We understand that angels are important in God's scheme and God's working in his providence. But how it all happens and how it all takes place and exactly how they even look. I mean, we say, well, okay, the cherubims were on, making up the Ark of the Covenant, and then Isaiah talks about, and they had wings and so forth and so on, but do they all? I mean, there's a lot of questions I could ask. none germane to this text. So let's just understand that these were two, evidently it calls them angels, we'll say angels, but they were in human form. Beyond that, I can't really answer much more about angels, at least with regards to this text, and maybe others. And so, as they come into the city, it's interesting that Lot was sitting in the gate of Sodom. Now, we don't know why Lot was sitting in the gate. It was a practice. There's a practice among some. But you say, well, why was Lot there at that time? Well, I don't know. Providence of God, maybe. But Lot is sitting there. He bows himself. He gives the common courtesies, if you will. He bows himself. He asks, verse 2, he asks for them to come and stay at his house, which is a common hospitality trait. In biblical times, when you went to the market, when you went to the public place, if you saw somebody that wasn't from there, a stranger, they didn't have, as we've called it before, they didn't have a Holiday Inn at Jerusalem. They didn't have that. And so people would invite others to come, and they would throw a big party. Big feast. It was a great honor to bring people into your house. You know, nowadays, and especially as time marches forward, it's a great honor to meet them at a restaurant. But in biblical times, it was a great honor to bring people in, and you'd have a big feast and treat them quite well, treat them royally. But their response in verse 2 was, no, we'll spend the night in the open square. Now, this was also a common practice. In other words, it was not only common to go to people's homes and partake in their hospitality, but you could also stay in the streets. And this would give them, if you will, the opportunity to see what's going on. This would give them the opportunity to view things and to see what was going on. And they said, no, we're going to stay in the streets. And then, verse 5, they called to Lot and said to him, where are the men? Well, let's go back, verse 4. Now, before they lay down, the men of the city, the men of Sodom, both old and young, all the people from every quarter surrounded the house. Okay, so you have a problem. Here's your problem. Lot's carried them. They did go to the house. They did go to Lot's house. When they get there, it's about time to lay down. And all the men from the city gather around. Well, we don't have to get into a lot of sodomy, and this is where the word sodomites comes from, is Sodom, and understand the want of the homosexual practice. And this is the call. We want to know them, and notice that the New King James adds the word carnally. We want to know them. The word know there has the idea of knowing from the standpoint of sexual relationships. And so he says, we want to know them carnally. So Lot went out to them through the doorway, shut the door behind him, and said, please, my brethren, do not do so wickedly. See now, I have 2 daughters who have not known a man. Please let me bring them out to you, and you may do to them as you wish. Only do nothing to these men, since it's reason they have come under the shadow of my roof. And they said, stand back. Then they said, this one came in to stay here, and he keeps acting as a judge. Now we will deal worse with you than with them. So they pressed hard against the man Lot and came near to break down the door. But the men reached out their hands and pulled Lot into the house with them and shut the door. And they struck the men who were at the doorway of the house with blindness, both small and great, that they became weary trying to find the door. It's pretty straightforward story, if you don't mind me saying that. Lot comes out. There is a problem. I mean, I think you see it, and I see it. You say, how could Lot offer his 2 daughters who are virgins? How could he offer them to these individuals? Well, let's look at several things, and admittedly, I'm going to tell you that all of these things, as we look at them, in my opinion, are not an excuse. They could be used, but nevertheless, they are possibilities to the answer. First of all, you say, well, how could he offer his daughters? Well, maybe he knew, because he had already made, remember last week as we were closing out, he had made a plea with God, and God said, if we can find 50 righteous, we'll save Sodom and Gomorrah. And he said, well, what about 45? And what about 40? And what about 30? And what about 20? What about? He knew the wickedness of Sodom. He knew what was going on. So you could say, well, he knew that these men wouldn't take him up on his offer. Okay, one possibility. You could say, well, he was protecting his visitors, and this was what you did in biblical times. Could be that. It could be that for whatever reason, and we don't know the reason why, but his daughters had not been with men yet, and he wanted them to be with them. You might say, well, wait a minute, preacher, that's fornication. I understand that. We don't have an answer. We don't know the answer. He offers, though, the daughters, and they basically say no. They're pressing hard to take Lot. They want to get through the door. They want these two men. And basically, as the story goes, as we just read, these two men pull Lot into the house and hit those men with blindness. Well, what happens next? Any questions, comments, thoughts, suggestions? Sure. Yeah, that was. Well, first of all, you've hit upon a theory that some have had, which that he knew who he was dealing with, and they were special. But the word Lord here is just a common greeting, sort of like what we would say, sir. So you've hit upon really a theory that is put out there by some. Anything else? Good question. Good point. No, I do too. I'm with you. I don't either. The best thing that the answer that I'm going to give you probably won't satisfy your question, because in my mind it doesn't satisfy the same question that I have. But God always, if you go through time, or not always, but God used righteous people in unrighteous situations to deliver people from their unrighteousness. If you go back through time, now you're going to say, well, that's true, and let's throw a second thing in it, and then we'll bring it together. And that is that God used righteous people who really were unrighteous. Now, let's throw the two together. None of us are perfect. Go through the Bible and think about stories of individuals in their righteousness. Abraham, Paul, Peter, Jeremiah, on and on the list goes. And yet, one of the fascinating and beautiful things about the Bible is that it also points out their flaws. And so righteous people who are not 100% righteous, because we all sin, were used by God and placed in unrighteous situations. Now, I'm with you. Sodom, completely wicked. And and Lot put his family in that situation. And most of us today will try to protect our children from those situations. And we should. Our grandchildren, our children. Because we can't take that risk. We can't take that possibility. He was trying. I don't know, and like I say, I know this answer is not, because this is the very same point that I have and same question that I have. That's why I don't preach a lot on Lot. is that how can you do that to your family? You know, we try to build fences in different ways around our families and protect our families. And how could even a righteous man put himself in that situation? I can think of, and this is really not a good comparison, but in some ways it is. There's a lot of missionaries that go to places where the church maybe is even non-existent, and they start in their homes. And they go out and talk to people, and they've put themselves in fairly wicked places, and they've been successful. They've found folks that want to follow the will of God, and so they've been able to start churches and build churches in those areas. But that may be a close scenario. I realize it's not a great comparison, but it's the. I don't think they offer up their daughters. That's the real problem I have more than. And then what you said that it's kind of. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well. Yeah.
Paul talked about it. If a woman is married to a Christian lady married to an unchristian man, he can be saved through her.
Yeah. Right. 1 Peter 3. Right. Yeah.
That's the only thing I can figure out.
Well, yeah, that's what I say. God uses righteous people in unrighteous situations to promote righteousness, and that's the only thing I can figure out. I don't like the answer because I get back to just what Steve said. How in the world do you offer your daughters? I mean, if the situation was flipped, if it was women and knocking on my door, I wouldn't offer my son up when he was younger. I wouldn't offer him up.
Let's face it, Paul, women didn't bounce much back in those days.
Well,
and you know that because, I mean, look how, you remember the lady that, she was a concubine to a prophet, I think.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway,
and they cut her up.
They cut her up, sent her a piece to each tribe. When it came out that morning, and she was laying there dead, he says, "Get up, let's go."
Yeah.
And he had put her out to be abused all night long. Women were not much better than cats.
Yes and no. Yes and no.
Well, I could argue that that might have been part of that.
Yeah.
The value of individuals is based upon the value that individuals place upon them. Your worth to me is based upon what I place upon you, to me. So the way I treat you is based upon the worth that I give you, the way I treat you. Okay? So if I love you and respect you, I'm going to treat you well. And I hope that you've noticed I treat you well. I hope you notice I'm trying. Let's put it like that. So we cannot always say 100% that this is the way people treated. I believe that Abraham treated Sarah very well.
Well, he was willing to give her to let the Pharaoh down in Egypt.
But he still treated her well.
When it was
We're going to see. Yeah, he does it again. He does it again. He does it again. No, he got animals.
Then he turned right around and sent Hagar out.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, and that
Because,
was treating her well.
but why did he do that? Why did he send Hagar out? Because Sarah was upset. What's the? He got a better deal. So therein lies the rub. Anything else? Yeah. Well, Sodom was not. There were lands that were, but Sodom was not, because, like I say, we're trying to find 10 righteous, and we know the story. I'm not spoiling the story. There's not 10 righteous found. Yep. Well, look at America today. We claim to be a Christian nation.
Who actually said, we say that, but who actually claims it?
I haven't studied it hard enough to find that out.
Right, we do.
Well,
We talked last week about morality and why we're so bad. What's God think about Saudi Arabia?
Yeah.
They're not moral.
Right.
You can't say they're moral. They chop people's hands off. That don't seem moral. They stone women who commit adultery. Certainly not, that's not in the pattern of Jesus. I can't call them moral. I don't think that makes them moral.
of course, here's the issue that some would use. I'm not saying it's right, okay? This is our morality. They use their morality based upon what they believe to be true. I'm not saying it's right. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying it's right. Morality is based upon what you want to base it upon. You can have what's called situation ethics, which you base your morality upon the situation. In other words, a lie is not always a lie. I don't think so. You can justify it, but it's still a lie. So therefore, what do you do with Ephesians 4, which says don't lie? What do you do with Ephesians 4, where Paul says don't lie? And then you have to ask a question: is that sorry? But then, I've sat through ethics class. This is an ethics class. But then you have the issue of okay, you said I'm sorry for the lie, but then you have to ask yourself, did I truly repent? Because am I really sorry? And so is that? So there's the question. So what are you going to do? So you have to ask yourself, and then that becomes the answer. But what is your morality based on? I'm sorry, I sat through too many Ralph Gilmore ethics classes.
You should have lied about it. I would like that.
Yeah. It's one of these. Let me give you this answer. It's one of those answers with regards to Lot. We can't answer. You know why? We're not given all the information. So that leads me to a caution that I caution people and have for years. When you begin to read the Bible, read it for what it says, not for what you want it to say. And when you begin to read it for what it says, you say, okay, we understand. And some of the decisions that were made were not perfect, were not right, were not good. But what is God doing? He's teaching us. And that to me is the beauty, at least in part, of the Bible. That God would allow the dirt to be exposed of people. God could have written about all the absolutely good, correct, right things these folks did. Now let me ask you, how would you feel after you read the Bible? Especially after you read it at the end of the day, say, when you had screwed up royally. You'd be, man, I can't do this. I can't make it. I can't get to heaven. I mean, I've had people ask me through the years, can you preach a lesson or can you teach a class? Is anybody going to go to heaven? Yeah, because they are. We are. It gets back to the grace and mercy of God. And I'm thankful. Maybe you consider me a little off, and that's fine. I am grateful that God put some of the dirt on folks in the Bible. So now I know when I mess up, some folks that were considered righteous did too. Because one of the things that we all probably have is there are parts of our family that we don't tell that part of the family, right? We have the black sheep, we have the folks. I jokingly used to say, and I don't say this anymore because but we're all getting older, but I jokingly said years ago that if we were to have a family reunion, we'd have to do it in jail because folks were there. That's not all true. Matter of fact, I only know of one that he visited for a few nights, and he ended up working in one. So he must have gotten on the right side of the law somewhere along the line. And so we understand there's dirt in everybody's house, and that doesn't mean that it's right, but it's there. Anything else?
I think one thing, and this is just my opinion, and things that, there was a movie called Courage Under Fire one time, and these people had like 5 seconds to do the right thing. And that always bothered me, because I always wondered if I would do the right thing. And I think this is a lot being reactionary. Was it right? No, I don't think so. I think he was just trying to save the people, and that was his first reaction. And I know a lot of times in my life, when I do things from an emotional standpoint, it's usually not the right thing. Most of the time.
Yeah, we know you're not that bad.
But I think that God has grace and mercy upon us, and I think this is, it don't a lot screw up in my opinion, but how many times have I done something in a reactionary way that was not right either?
Right.
Just because you didn't. It was just your first reaction. You either kept silent when you shouldn't, or you did something you shouldn't, and it's a lot you have to live with.
It's a good point. It's a good point. It's a good point, and very true. Very true. I'm not going to comment on it much because some of it fits into what my sermon is this morning. So but it's very good. Very true. Anything else? It's not all of my sermon, but it's just a little part of it. But it's very good. Anything else? All right. Well, verse 12. Then the men said to Lot, have you anyone else here, son-in-law, your sons, your daughters, and whomever you have in the city? Take them out of this place. For we will destroy this place, because the outcry against them has grown great before the face of the Lord, and the Lord has sent us to destroy it. So Lot went out, spoke to his sons-in-law who married his daughters, and said, get up, get out of this place, for the Lord will destroy this city. But to his sons-in-laws, he seemed to be joking. I was reading this again last night, and I thought, this is telling me something that I really don't know, because I need, just for me, because I'm dumb, I need a little further information. But I just wonder about the personality of Lot, because his son-in-laws thought he was joking. Now, you could ascribe to his son-in-laws the fact that they, A, didn't believe in the power of God, or B, that they thought, this is a city and we don't, who's going to come in? There's nothing around here threatening. And then they could have thought, they could have said, well, we're in love with this place and we don't want to leave. And so, he's just joking. He's just joshing us. So I don't know the answer to all that, but I just thought it was interesting. As I was, looking at this again last night, they thought he was joking. Well, what does that tell me about Lot? Don't know, but it might give me some insight. When the morning dawned, the angels urged Lot to hurry, saying, arise, take your wife and your 2 daughters who are here, lest you be consumed in the punishment of the city. And so God is giving him warning. There's a great thought. God gives us warnings. We need to heed those warnings. And so they're given warnings, and they need to heed the warnings. Verse 16 says, while he lingered, the men took hold of his hand, his wife's hand, and the hands of his two daughters, and the Lord being merciful to him, and they brought him out and set him outside the city. So it came to pass that when it brought them outside, he said, escape for your life. Do not look behind, nor stay anywhere in the plain. Escape to the mountains, lest you be destroyed. Then Lot said, do you get a sense that Lot was part used car salesman? I mean, he's always making a bargain. He's always making a deal. He did last week. He's going to this week. Please, no, my lords. Indeed, your servants found favor in your sight. You've increased your mercy, which you have shown me by saving my life. But I cannot escape to the mountains, lest some evil overtake me and I die. Too far. He said it's too far. Well, okay. So now this city is near enough to flee to, and it's a little one. Please let me escape there. Is it not a little one? And my soul shall live. And he said to him, see, I have favored you concerning this thing also, in that I will not overthrow this city for which you have spoken. Hurry, escape there, for I cannot do anything until you arrive there. Therefore, the name of the city was called Zoar, which doesn't add anything to the story, but Zoar actually means little. And so this was a small little community, small little place in which he asked to go. The sun had risen upon the earth when Lot entered Zoar, and the Lord rained brimstone and fire on Sodom and Gomorrah from the Lord out of the heavens. So he overthrew these cities, all the plains and the inhabitants of the cities, and what grew on the ground. This was annihilation. I mean, everything's gone. Cities taken over. The everything's gone. Everything's basically, you could say, burnt up. But his wife, Lot's wife, verse 26, looked back. Now, we have to understand the word looked, and you've heard in sermons before. The word look there is not the idea of just to glance back, to see what's going on. It's not the fact that the sounds of what was happening behind her so intrigued her that she looked back. It's the idea of looking back longingly, looking back as if maybe even to want to go back. That's pretty powerful. She looked, and she looked back, and it says, verse 27, Abraham went early in the morning to the place where he'd stood before the Lord, and he looked toward Sodom and Gomorrah and toward all the land of the plain. He saw, and behold, the smoke of the land which went up like the smoke of a furnace. And it came to pass, when the Lord destroyed the cities of the plain, that God remembered Abraham and sent Lot out in the midst of the overthrow, when he overthrew the cities in which Lot had dwelt. And so, we'll finish out the chapter, but sort of the end of Lot. Lot chose, and Lot chose wrong. I think that in many ways could be, per our discussion, one lesson that we really do need to learn out of this. Choose wisely, choose carefully, choose intelligently, choose by doing a little bit of investigative work, a little study. When you all hired me, I'm sure Jim and the rest that were on the search committee and Ken and the others, Joyce and Teresa and Linda. I knew there was somebody else I was trying to think of, Linda. Linda were on the search committee. They did some background check on me. And did y'all do a financial background check on me? Steve, you did? It seemed like I gave somebody the information. I did that to one other congregation thinking I was going to get that job, and they had no interest in hiring me. I do not like that. I didn't mind giving it to a church that was thinking about looking into my background. You all studied me. That's good. I think that's only fair and right. I knew I didn't like that man. But I did some background check on y'all too, so by the way. So it works both ways. I still treat her with kindness, even though. But, why Lot made that choice, I don't know. But I think he should have done more homework. And I think that he should have listened to what he learned, and maybe he listened to the wrong people. I don't know why he made the choice he made. Scriptures don't tell us. It just says that he chose the well-watered plains.
Do we know that it was bad when he went?
Seems as if it was. I can't answer that definitively. I think that's a really good question. I can't answer it definitively. Just notice what I said. Seems as if it was. And anything else?
What happened to the sons-in-law?
Don't know. That's a great question. They probably didn't like them, and so they probably left them, and they burn up. Somebody's going to go home and say that we had a preacher once that I don't know. I'm always careful what I say in class or sermons too, but because I can just see, because we all do this. Don't get me wrong. I mean, y'all are no different than anybody else, but like here, every once in a while, I'll hear you say, "Well, we had a preacher once that said," and that's just what we all do.
How can you assume that people escaped? It doesn't say everything, does it?
Well, no, it doesn't. Why I would be right. Hadn't had a man left in the earth. That's part of it. And
all politics is local.
Yeah, well, well, all that would look at them, that's the way I kind of pictured it in my head. And I realized that. That's why I really wasn't going to say it. It just sort of slipped out this morning. But I was thinking that as I was studying this. I thought, I studied this Wednesday, and then I was studying it again last night. And I thought, I came to that same thought both times. And I realized, I'm sorry. Don't tell Suzanne I said that. Please. But why I tend not to think, or why I tend to think that, it's just Lot and his family, because of the reference in the New Testament says whereby Lot and his family were saved. And then also, if they had found 10 righteous folks, the Lord said he wouldn't destroy it. So they had to find them. Good point. Yeah, that's a needle in a haystack. Anything else? All good. All good. Okay, well, we can at least finish the chapter. Lot went up out of Zoar, dwelt in the mountains, and his 2 daughters were with him, for he was afraid to dwell in Zoar, and he and his 2 daughters dwelt in a cave. That I can't answer that. I mean, there's probably questions with regards to that, and I'm stuck on that one, but it just kind of gives you some background information. The firstborn said to the younger, "Our father is old, and there is no man on the earth to come in to us, as is the custom of all the earth." Now, let's kind of stop right here and let's think about this for a minute. This incident is not lifted up as something that's praiseworthy. Okay? This is not said, "Oh, this is what you should have done." This is what happened. There's a difference. When we look at it, we say, boy, that's an incestuous relationship. Plied by liquor. Yes. Okay. Strange thing. Incest was condemned, right? But not at this point in time. We don't know whether it was condemned at this point in time or not. See what I'm saying? We read the book of Leviticus but God hadn't given that law yet. Is it wrong today? Most definitely. Most definitely. But be careful about applying scriptures where you can't apply them. In other words, let me give you another, maybe one that we more understand. Take something out of Leviticus, the way they treated lepers, circumcision, we talked about last week. Anything, say, found in Leviticus out of the old law, and put it over into our time. Doesn't always fit. We don't wait the 8th day to circumcise a child. Usually, I think, help me out. I think it's within the first 24 hours we circumcise a child now. Yeah. It was, we talked about this last week, so I'm not going to get into it. It was something that was done on the 8th day because vitamin K, clotting agent, is the highest. But we can't apply circumcision, first of all, because the New Testament says nothing about it. It tells us to, if it does mention circumcision in the New Testament, what does it talk about circumcising? It says nothing about the foreskin of males, privates. So we say, well, we don't have to do it the 8th day. We don't even have to do it. That's right. Why? Because that's the old law. And so we don't take the old law and put it over here and say, okay, this is what we have to do. Now, don't take the old law and go backwards. Now, I'm not saying that I like this story or that I think it's right or it's right what he did. I'm not saying that. But be very careful in what you say and how you apply things. It's just, I go back to, I keep developing within my head how to study the Bible, series of lessons. I've done them before, but I keep trying to think of things to improve that series. And I think this is just one of those things. Now, like I said, I don't like it. So what happens? Let's go on. Verse 32. Come, let us make our father drink wine, and we will lie with him, that we may preserve the lineage of our fathers. Now, that was important. It was important to the Jew, first of all. To a Jewish woman, it was important to have children. Why? Because that was seen as a blessing from God. Second of all, it was important that the family line, the family tree, keep going. That was huge. You knew your lineage. If you were a Jew, you knew your lineage, and you could trace it all the way back, especially to Abraham. Most Jewish folks today can trace their line back, and maybe not completely, but fairly completely. So you say, well, they were doing something that they thought was right. I get it. I still don't like the story, but let's go on. Verse 33, they made their father drink wine that night. Firstborn went in, lay with her father, and she did not know when she lay down, or he did not know, when she laid down, when she rose. So he was inebriated. It happened on the next day that the firstborn said to the younger, indeed, I lay with my father last night. Let us make him drink wine tonight also. You go in and lie with him, that we may preserve the lineage of our father. Then they made their father drink wine that night also. The younger arose, lay with him. He did not know when she lay down, when she rose. Thus both the daughters of Lot were with child by their father. Firstborn bore a son, called his name Moab. He is the father of the Moabites to this day. The younger, she also bore a son, called his name Ben-Ami. He is the father of the people of Ammon to this day. And they didn't necessarily get along either, by the way. And so, in many ways, when I finish reading that one chapter, in many ways what I come out with is the sadness of Lot's family. And how decisions, choices, poor choices, and even trying to do what you think is the right thing is not always the right thing, and so you have to be careful. Anything else?
Paul, you said that you really don't have to go law to judge the girl's actions. I guess we have a law to judge it with the...
True. No, true. Yeah, if you ever get a hold of, which one's it in? Homer Haley was a preacher for the ultra-conservative movement in the church. Homer Haley wrote several books, and it's in one of his books. I cannot remember which one, but he talks about, in the book, he talks about that there was evidently a third law, which was actually the first, that we don't have, that they lived by. And so it's an interesting read, and I wished I could, I may have it in one of my books in my library. And so, but yes, I agree with you. So, anything else? Yeah. Well, hyperbole, exaggeration of the truth. We do it all the time. Self-delusion. How many times do our children come in when they were little and they wanted something and they tell you this? Everybody's got it. And we do it as adults. So, yeah. Anything else? Just 998, actually. Very true. Anything else? All right, let's bow. Our Father in heaven, we're thankful for this day, for the opportunity to study your word. We realize as we studied today that folks don't always do what's right. And we ask that we can learn from them so that we can do better and we can be the type people that you want us to be, and always set our heart and our minds upon you and try our best to follow your will and do it your way. Be with us, watch over us, bless us, and keep us. Forgive us of our sins, for this is our prayer in Christ's name. Amen. Y'all have a great, great week.